like I said, our emotions impact not just our mental health, but our physical health as well. And when we try to run away from or deny our emotions by locking them up or pretending we're okay, they will always resurface, whether it's emotionally, mentally, or physically. Emotional healing is the process of acknowledging, allowing, accepting, integrating, and processing painful life experiences and strong emotions. Learning emotional awareness and emotional intelligence is a key to doing that. So, emotions can be a bit of a sensitive topic for some people. Maybe we grew up in an environment where showing emotion was just not a thing, or an environment where there was an expectation of gender-appropriate emotional responses. Maybe you've been told you were too much, or too sensitive, or too emotional. Maybe you've even heard phrases like, big girls don't cry, or man up. Well, for anyone who's been hanging around on Transformative Journeys a while, you know me. I'm going to call bullshit on all of that, because today we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence, what it is, why it matters, and how growing your emotional intelligence can literally change your life, your relationships, and even your healing journey. So let's dig into that. You know how life throws us curveballs? Nobody gets through this journey of life without a few storms. Welcome to Transformative Journeys. I'm your host, Johanna LaRue. Each week, I'll share my thoughts and insights and dig into strategies that can empower you to rediscover yourself, learn about transforming pain into power, building confidence to navigate life's challenges, and cultivating a life of meaning and joy. Join me on this journey of exploration and transformation. Welcome back to Transformative Journeys with Johanna. And you know what? Still Johanna here. In the last few episodes, we've been talking a lot about some of the hard stuff. Guilt, boundaries, burnout, and how hard it can sometimes be to choose ourselves. We've also talked a bit about self-care, building resilience, and reclaiming the truth in that inner dialogue that plays out in our head and then in our lives. And all of that really ties back in one way or another into what we're going to be talking about today: how we understand and manage our emotions. We're going to explore what emotional intelligence actually means, not as a corporate HR buzzword, but as a legit life-changing skill. And let's start with something pretty basic and pretty obvious sometimes. A lot of us didn't have great role models when it came to legitimately and honestly expressing emotions, let alone actually processing and dealing with them, me included. We were taught how to suppress them, how to hide them, swallow them, or basically override them. But emotions are powerful forces that shape both our mental and our emotional and our physical health. So becoming aware of emotions and understanding their impact on us is a cornerstone to beginning to heal from old emotional wounds and taking control of our emotional responses to life's challenges moving forward. So first of all, I want you to know that I am not coming from a place of judgment here. Not that I ever am, but I want you to trust me when I say that not only was I really shitty at this for most of my life, but I made myself sick, like lose 40 pounds in 3 months sick after my son died, because I had zero understanding of the full body impacts that not processing, not dealing with, and hiding my emotions results in. Let's quickly back up a few or a lot of years. My dad was a long distance truck driver, and he was often gone for up to 2 weeks at a time. So I was raised primarily in a big girls don't cry and good girls don't get angry environment by a mom who was somewhat emotionally unavailable for me and was very stiff upper lip. And by the way, I'm a bit ashamed to admit this, but when my kids were young, not really knowing any better, I almost certainly repeated some of that rhetoric to them. So when my son died, after the first month or so of pretty much nonstop crying, which I think almost everyone around me understandably got tired of, not because they didn't care, but because they felt helpless to fix something that just couldn't be fixed. I did what I was brought up to do. I figured out how to put a mask firmly in place, showing the world the face that I thought they expected, and just doing what needed to be done. I shopped for groceries, I paid the bills, attended family events and neighborhood get-togethers, got my daughter ready for graduation. Basically, I walked and talked and functioned on the outside in all of the socially appropriate ways. I smiled and said thank you to people when they told me how strong I was and how well I was doing. That strategy was an epic fail on my part and actually led to me developing stress-triggered IBS. I wasn't coping, although it looked like I was from the outside. I wasn't processing, and I was not dealing with my emotions. The only way I really knew how to express them was by crying. And crying's good, crying's healthy, but sometimes it's not enough. And I was mostly only allowing myself to do that when I was alone, and I was hiding or suppressing them around others. I am not unique in that default behavior. I am not unique in growing up hearing stuff like, big boys don't cry. You're fine, stop crying. Or even worse, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Or don't you dare raise your voice to me. So the road here, where I consider myself at least moderately emotionally aware and emotionally intelligent, wasn't an easy one. Not that I am well known for taking the easy road anywhere. I think I've said that before. Counseling helped. So has all of the trauma-informed peer support training that I've done through my volunteer work with Threads of Life. Lots and lots and lots of self-work. I've told you before, I'm not a therapist, a psychologist, a scientist. I'm not any kind of ist. But I just need to know the why about things. I want to know the psychology about what makes us tick. I want to know the neuroscience behind how our brains work and why they react to things the way they do. I'm fascinated by the anthropology behind how and why we developed as a species to react to things the way we do. So anyways, enough about me. Back to emotions. Like I said, our emotions impact not just our mental health, but our physical health as well. And when we try to run away from or deny our emotions by locking them up or pretending we're okay, they will always resurface, whether it's emotionally, mentally, or physically. Emotional healing is the process of acknowledging, allowing, accepting, integrating, and processing painful life experiences and strong emotions. Learning emotional awareness and emotional intelligence is a key to doing that. So as children, we typically begin to start to comprehend basic emotions like happy, sad, scared, and mad by around the age of 3 or 4. By the time we're teenagers, we can actually articulate or usually articulate more complex emotions like being annoyed versus angry, or being hurt versus being upset, or feeling anxious rather than just scared. However, this is also around the time when our parents or caregivers really start to strongly discourage us from exhibiting our emotions. We might be told that it's disrespectful to display anger towards adults, or that we're too old to cry over something. And then add to that the peer pressure of either having to hide certain emotions or exhibit certain emotions in order to fit in, and sometimes even being made to feel ashamed of some of our emotions, leaves us woefully ill-prepared to even articulate what we're feeling when a painful experience or a crisis happens, let alone how to process our emotions in a healthy way. So let's step back into science for a minute. Emotional or psychology, maybe, I'm not really sure where this fits in, but emotional intelligence and emotional awareness are actually two different but related things. Our infinitely remarkable brain has a faster than lightning and dynamic system for interpreting and processing things going on in our environment, and then triggering an emotional response to events based on that interpretation. And then activating a physiological or bodily response to that event or that emotion. I find it utterly fascinating, and it's an integral part of our survival as a species. So let me sort of break it down. Let's say something happens in our life. I'll maybe use my little uncontrolled emotional spiral from episode 13 as an example. Your boss says something offhand to you that for no really tangible reason makes you feel incredibly upset. Your heart starts beating faster, your chest feels tight, your shoulders tense, and you can start to feel your temperature going up. You're not just upset, you're feeling quite angry. And the truth is, you really can't pinpoint what they said to make you feel angry. Well, if you actually came to the conclusion that you're feeling anger, I mean, good for you. You've just exhibited some emotional awareness. How did you arrive at that conclusion in the 0.0006 seconds that it took you to feel angry and identify that? Well, it's actually amazing, kind of. Not kind of. It's very amazing. Our limbic system in our brains is where all of this micro-action takes place. It's responsible for regulating our emotions, behavior, and for our memory, plus some other physiological stuff too. It includes our amygdala, which I've talked about lots of times, which picks up on the cues both from outside of us, in our example that I was just talking about, like what our boss said, and inside of us, like a past memory where someone else spoke to us in that way. And with faster than lightning speed, it sends a message to our hypothalamus, which regulates our physiological or our bodily response, the sensations like that tension and the increased heart rate and that hot, flushed feeling. And like I said, all of this happens faster than we can imagine, which is why we often feel our emotions before we think them cognitively. And I love how Brené Brown puts it. She says, they call them feelings because they show up in our bodies first. And if you want to read a really good book that digs deep into identifying our emotions, I highly recommend Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown. She identifies 87 different emotions and experiences in such a thoroughly relatable way. And why do I think understanding 87 different emotions is important? Because when we can name what we're feeling, we can navigate it better. For many of us, feelings make us feel vulnerable, and feeling vulnerable feels yucky. So we try to ignore, hide, or cover them up. And simply acknowledging and identifying what we feel, like I feel angry or I feel sad, actually soothes our limbic system and allows other more rational parts of our brain to kick in and help us process what we're feeling and even identify triggers for that emotion. And this might seem obvious for some emotions like anger or sadness, but might be less obvious for more difficult to articulate emotions like overwhelm or insecurity. Emotional awareness helps you identify the emotion and pick up on the associated triggers you might have. And that's where a little bit of inner magic happens. Because if we can identify our triggers for emotion, we can more easily pull the right tool out of our resiliency toolbox to help us tame it. Are you feeling like you might not have the tools you'd like to in your resiliency toolbox? I can try to help with that. Head over to transformativejourneys.ca or scroll down to the show notes for a link to my Essential Resiliency Toolkit. It's my free mini guide with some of my most used resiliency tools, and it's all yours free. Emotional intelligence, on the other hand, is taking that a step farther. It's great to be able to identify our basic emotions like happiness, sadness, anger, fear, but research has found that expanding our emotional vocabulary, our ability to really identify and name our feelings accurately, can help us to regulate our emotions more effectively. And developing our emotional awareness to include some of those more difficult to articulate feelings and emotions begins with some really pretty basic and simple steps. I have an exercise that I use in my workshops that I like to call Name It to Tame It. I suggest when you feel yourself overcome by an emotional response, and remember that's the physical sensations that happen as a result of the emotions, that first you take a few deep breaths. Controlled breathing or mindful breathing is well known for its ability to quickly soothe that limbic system, right? So then name the emotion or the emotions as best as you can. And then take a few moments to see if you can really narrow down that description. Is it anger or is it frustration? Is it sadness or is it maybe loneliness? Is it fear or is it perhaps actually anxiety? Then start to think about what thoughts are connected to those emotions. And then write down a brief sentence to describe that feeling. Naming it really does help to tame it. And if you really struggle with pinpointing specific emotions, there's a really great tool available all over the internet called a feelings wheel. And there's a number of versions, from somewhat simple, straightforward ones to others with more complex, deeper emotional descriptions. And I highly recommend you download one and begin to use it to help you increase your emotional vocabulary. So why does all of this matter? Because like I said earlier, our emotions strongly shape both our mental and our physical health. Emotions aren't just neurons firing away randomly that come and go. They impact our brain structure in a powerful way, and they influence our physiological processes, so our body responses on a deep level, affecting everything from our heart rate to digestion to our immune functions. Emotions are like the first responders at the site of an incident. They're your body's immediate response to a stimuli, whatever it is that's going around and or to you, and they play a crucial role in decision making and action. They can shape our perception of events and how we respond to them. And because our emotional responses cause the release of hormones and neurotransmitters, they can significantly impact our health and well-being. When we talked earlier about how our limbic system reacted to the situation with our boss, that process in our brain sets off what we call our fight or flight response, our brain and body's automatic response to anything that feels like it might be threatening or dangerous to us. And note here that threatening or dangerous are somewhat subjective words here because we don't have to be in physical danger for our amygdala to react like we are. So our fight or flight response causes our body to react with all of the stuff I talked about earlier, like the increased heart rate because our lizard brain thinks we might need to run from a saber-toothed tiger, that rapid breathing to prepare us for action where, we might need to run from that tiger or not, and even dilating our pupils to take in more light so we can see if there are more of those tigers waiting in the shadows for us. But it also causes our body to flood with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. And chronic flooding of our bodies with those hormones can lead to significant health issues. Things like high blood pressure, chronic digestive issues, cardiovascular disease, a weakened immune system. That's why it's critical to develop our emotional awareness, our emotional vocabulary, and our emotional intelligence. We can't always avoid having an emotional response because shit happens that we have zero control over. So expecting to completely eliminate those responses and the stress that they cause is completely unrealistic. But we can learn how to identify and respond in a healthier way to our emotional responses. And we can use that to find ways that work for us to minimize, to mitigate, or to manage our physiological response to those stressful events. We can help ourselves become more resilient. So, building and developing tools and strategies to help us regulate our emotional response to situations and events and to cope with stress is a key component of developing resilience, which is where we tie back into some of the previous episodes where I dig more deeply into resiliency building tools. But we'll do like a brief Cole's Notes version today. So first, and at the top of the list, because it's the easiest to implement almost anywhere, is deep breathing exercises. They are highly effective for reducing stress, anxiety, and just promoting general relaxation because they soothe our limbic system and tame our amygdala, allowing us to access that more rational part of our brain. Mindfulness or meditation, if you're into that, both of them can calm our hamster brain, and both are super ways to reduce anxiety and improve our emotional regulation. And mindfulness is the simplest to start out with. And if you want some great mindfulness activities and tips, go back and listen to episode 7 because I give a ton of them there. Connecting with nature is a big one. Research has shown numerous benefits to spending time outside in nature, including reduction in stress and anxiety, improved cognitive function, better mood, improved physical health, and just overall better quality of life. But I also find that when I need to think and process emotions, I do it better outside where I'm connected with nature. Stress balls, worry stones, fidget spinners. Need something small and relatively inconspicuous to focus on while you're working on calming your breathing? Perfect. They are perfect. They also help to physically direct nervous energy as a bonus to calm and soothe us physically and even to help reduce anxiety. So these are just a few simple suggestions. But the important thing to remember is that learning how to mitigate our response to our emotions with coping strategies is great. but it can be a bit like putting a strip of duct tape on a leaking water main. It might work in the short term, but no matter how good you get at deep breathing or mindfulness or working your fidget spinner, it isn't a long-term strategy for dealing with underlying issues that are at the root of our emotional turmoil. Coping strategies that help with our immediate emotional responses are essential tools for sure for helping us manage our immediate emotions and can provide some short-term relief from overwhelming feelings, but they're more effective when they're combined with really understanding our emotions and the sometimes hidden triggers for those emotions. So if you have a notebook or paper handy today, I'm going to encourage you to do a little bit of self-reflection. As always, make it kind and ask yourself this question. What emotion do you struggle to name or acknowledge? And what might shift if you gave it some space this week? So this week we talked about emotional intelligence, being able to really identify our emotions, how they sort of happen within our brain, and why it's important to begin to develop our emotional awareness, as well as a few tools to hopefully get you started exploring yours. As we wrap up, I want you to remember, emotions aren't weakness, and they're part of what makes us wonderfully, beautifully, exquisitely flawed human beings. And if you weren't taught how to feel them, you can learn. We all deserve to learn, because healing isn't about pretending everything's okay. It's about experiencing the beauty of life and feeling our way through it, one emotion at a time. Thank you for being here with me today. If this episode helped you find language for some stuff you've been feeling or helped you feel a little bit more seen or heard, please share it, leave a review, send me a message, or forward it to a friend who needs to hear it. Come say hi to me on Instagram at transformativejourneys.johanna, or you can throw a little something into my duct tape fund at buymeacoffee.com/transformativejourneys, or stop by and visit my website. All the links will be below. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button on your favorite platform and tap the bell icon to be notified when a new episode drops. Until next time, this is Johanna reminding you that it doesn't matter if you fall. What matters is how well you bounce. This is Transformative Journeys. See you next time. Just wanted to throw in a disclaimer. This podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and should not replace the advice of a medical or mental health expert. I'm not a licensed counselor or a therapist, just a human with a mic and a story of growth and resilience. No degree, no fancy letters after my name. I'm a full-time student at the School of Hard Knocks, University of Life, where I figure I'll graduate when I take my last breath. In other words, I'm just Johanna, a fellow human being on my journey through this thing called life, and your concierge on this transformative journey.